was up down 20 bucks on that beat. If they would have reported 14,000, gold probably would have shot up by a lot more than $20. It might have been up $50. In fact, gold was up yesterday. It closed up $73 on the bad news, back above 33.60. But I think gold would probably already be above 3,500 had we got the correct jobs numbers right off the bat, because all gold really did was recover ground it never should have lost, but it should have gained a lot of ground. Now, I think it's going to recover that ground pretty quickly. I think now that people are going to realize what they should have realized a long time ago, that we have a weak labor market. And of course, a lot of people are thinking that now this weak labor market is going to give the Fed cover to cut rates in September. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. I just want to talk a little bit more about these jobs numbers, because after the jobs numbers came out, of course, Donald Trump was very unhappy with these numbers. And about a few hours later, I read on the tape that Trump fired the woman who is in charge of the Labor Department where they come up with these statistics. He fired her for being incompetent, right? For doing a lousy job. Now, initially, I was wondering, what exactly is he firing her for? Is he firing her because the last 6 jobs numbers were all off and they all had to be revised down? So is that why he's firing her? Because, she's doing such a bad job that they're so far off every month and they have to go back and they have to revise it? No, that's not why he's firing her. He made it clear. He came out and said later in the day, I'm firing her because today's jobs numbers were rigged. I don't believe these numbers. I don't believe these revisions. He's saying that he believes that the reason the jobs number missed and the reason that the last 2 jobs reports were revised down by a record number of jobs was just to make him look bad, right? So the Labor Department, right? And it's, of course, the person in charge doesn't compute these numbers. I mean, maybe she gets them. There's all number of people. There's lots of people. I forget how many, 40 people maybe I read, that work on these numbers. Now, look, I think it's a waste of time. Just fire them, right? And I think the numbers are so inaccurate that what's the point of wasting all this money on all these government pencil pushers to come up with inaccurate numbers? Look, ADP comes out with a number. That's good enough. I mean, if the markets want job statistics, let private companies supply them. I mean, I don't like the government anyway supplying economic data because I don't trust the government, because the government is biased. Again, it's like asking the mafia to compute crime statistics. Obviously, the mafia is going to say, hey, there's no crime. We don't need any cops. See, look, nobody's getting robbed. There's no extortion. There's no racketeering. There's no need for any police. Of course, right? The mafia, is not going to be unbiased, right? Or it's like, letting kids grade their own report cards. Oh, my kid got straight A's. What do you know? Of course, right? If the kids grade their own report cards, what do you think? They're going to fail themselves? So you need an objective person. So I think we should fire everybody. He shouldn't just fire the head. Fire the entire department. Shut it down. We don't even need it. But I digress on that. I don't want to, go down that rabbit hole right now. I want to stay on the jobs numbers. But so Trump fires her because this is rigged, which is impossible for her to rig it. It would have to be a conspiracy among everybody. And again, when I have been saying the numbers were bad, I didn't say it was, a conspiracy to fudge the numbers. My critique has always been that the methodology is wrong. The way they calculate these numbers, that's the problem. And maybe they've been designed to be wrong. It's not a conspiracy to fake them. Nobody is, getting the numbers and they're low and they're saying, oh, let's just, lie and make them good because we want to make Obama or Biden look good. Oh, we want to make Trump look bad. So let's erase this good number we got and substitute it. They couldn't get away with that. But if the methodology is wrong, then it's garbage in, garbage out. It's the same thing with GDP. It's the same thing with inflation, except in the other direction. So the unemployment numbers are lower than they really are, but the number of jobs created is higher. GDP is always higher. In fact, we got 3% GDP that came out on Wednesday, stronger than expected. Trump was talking about how great that was. Oh, look, 3% growth. Well, why is that number real? right? And in fact, all the jobs reports that came out in the past that were wrong, but initially beat the estimates, Trump believed that, oh yeah, those statistics are accurate. But when it's a bad number, oh, it's been rigged. And of course, if the head of the Labor Department was really trying to make Trump look bad, why did she wait until August 1st to do it? Why did all these other reports, in fact, every single jobs report that has been released, I think, since Trump was president, was a beat? Now, they were all revised down to a miss, but the original reports were all beats. Why didn't she rig those? Because those are the ones that Trump was able to go out and brag about. So if there was a conspiracy to make Trump look bad, why didn't they do it earlier? They just decided they wanted to make him look bad after all these months of making him look good. So it's ridiculous. I mean, talk about shooting the messenger. That's what Trump does. But again, this is all part of the Trump show. I've been explaining this. None of this is real, right? So Trump is confronted with bad economic data. And rather than acknowledge that it's bad, well, let's just fire the person who compiled it because the numbers can't be bad. And that's what he said. He said, the economy is great. We are booming, right? Well, how does he know we have a great economy? Because he says so? I mean, maybe Trump just believes that he's so good at whatever he does that the fact that he is president means we can't but have a great economy because he's the greatest president ever. And so we must have the greatest economy ever. I mean, that's what he believes. In fact, and I'm going to get into tariffs later, but, he's talking about how we're getting rich on tariffs. I mean, how do you get rich? By taxing yourself? I mean, does he really believe that the road to riches lies in taxation? That the more taxes we have, the richer we're going to be? It's actually the opposite. We're not tariffing ourselves into wealth. We're tariffing ourselves into poverty because tariffs reduce free trade. And the freer we are, the more prosperous we are. So we don't increase prosperity by increasing taxes. We do it by decreasing the size of government so that we can reduce taxes. But again, I'm going to get into that. Let me stick on the jobs again before I jump ahead of myself. Weak jobs numbers. Now, if Powell comes back and says, oh, the economy wasn't as weak as we thought. But that also undermines the Fed because is the Fed really just putting everything on these government numbers? I mean, why do we have all these economists that work at the Fed if they just look at government numbers? If they just take government numbers, as gospel and they just build all their policy on these numbers. I mean, I said that before. I said, how could you base policy on numbers that are wrong, that are going to be revised? So for Powell at last week to talk about how strong the economy is, how strong the labor market is, and then at the very next press conference say, hey, the labor market is not strong, it's weak. So we got it wrong because we believe the government. Well, don't you have your own people, right? Didn't you know the government got it wrong? How could you, but there is some excuse. But given the ground that Trump laid out, or Powell rather, his criteria about inflation and making sure that these tariffs don't end up causing higher inflation, which again, they're not going to be the cause, but they could certainly be the excuse that the Fed could use. But I know that prices are going to be moving up as more of the importers start to add on these tariffs, knowing that their customers are broke. Some of the tariffs may not be passed on to the customers. They may be eaten by the businesses, but these are American businesses that are going to have to suffer, right? Their profits are going to be reduced by whatever portion of the tariffs they absorb. And so what negative impact is that going to have on the economy? If companies have lower profits because they have to eat some of the tariffs because their customers can't afford to pay them, well, they have less money available to make capital investments, to grow their companies, to hire more workers. So the tariffs are going to have a negative impact on the economy, especially on the consumer part of it, right? Because that's where they're focused, right? We're making consumption more expensive, right? These are taxes on consumption. They're excise taxes.